Danny Fontaine. Pitch: how to captivate and convince any audience on the planet. You're at a cocktail party when someone asks what you do for a living. You launch into a detailed explanation of your role, responsibilities, and industry experience. 5 minutes later, they excuse themselves, mumbling something about finding the restroom. The same dynamic plays out in conference rooms worldwide every day, except the stakes are much higher. Whether you're at a social gathering or in a corporate boardroom, the challenge of persuasion remains the same. How do you capture attention, create genuine connection, and move people to action? In this blink, you'll uncover why traditional approaches to pitching often backfire, and learn to convey your message with emotional resonance. Most important, you'll learn techniques for making your ideas impossible to ignore, moving people from indifference to action. Let's begin. Create an experience for your audience. The school board members file into the classroom, expecting another routine budget presentation. Instead, they find themselves squeezed into broken desks, fumbling with outdated textbooks whose pages fall apart in their hands. The teacher hands them worksheets and asks them to complete a simple assignment using the classroom's ancient computers, half of which won't turn on. For 10 excruciating minutes, these decision-makers experience the daily reality of underfunded education. Cramped conditions, inadequate materials, and mounting frustration. When the teacher finally speaks, her words land with undeniable impact. Now you understand what learning looks like here. We need your support to change this. The budget increase is approved unanimously. Making great pitches like these demands a fundamental shift in perspective. Whether you're seeking funding, proposing a project, or advocating for resources, the most compelling presentations often abandon traditional formats entirely. Rather than simply telling people what to think, exceptional pitches deliver experiences that lead audiences to insights. This principle extends far beyond boardrooms and classrooms into virtually every situation in which one person seeks to influence another. At its core, pitching is about persuasion, convincing others to support your ideas or offerings using whatever communication methods prove most effective. Successful persuasion depends on connection and impact, not on which software you choose or whether you use slides. Traditional presentation formats represent just one pathway among countless communication possibilities. When we automatically default to standard slide presentations, we artificially narrow our options and potentially miss far more powerful ways to reach our audience. A software company pitching to a hospital doesn't show PowerPoint slides about improved efficiency metrics. Instead, they set up mock emergency scenarios where the hospital executives have to find critical patient information using their current system versus the new one. When executives see they can access life-saving data in 30 seconds instead of 5 minutes, they sign the contract on the spot. Pitches like these use experience as their primary weapon of persuasion. The audience doesn't just hear about the problem, they live it. Whether through direct experience, storytelling, or demonstration, your goal should be to create a meaningful encounter that moves people, allowing your message to take hold with your audience and inspiring them to action. Why safe presentations are the most dangerous. What if the reason your last presentation failed had nothing to do with your content? Human brains operate on autopilot more than we realize. Most decisions happen beneath conscious awareness as people navigate their days using established mental shortcuts and familiar patterns. This automatic processing serves us well for routine tasks, but it creates a challenge for anyone with an important message to deliver. When audiences encounter yet another standard presentation format, their minds slip into passive reception mode, the office equivalent of highway hypnosis. This numbing effect of repetition explains why so many presentations fail to stick. After sitting through countless slide decks with similar structures, bullet points, and corporate templates, listeners develop a kind of immunity. Their attention drifts, retention plummets, and your carefully crafted message gets lost. The very familiarity that made your presentation feel like a safe bet actually works against you. Breaking this pattern requires deliberate disruption. When you introduce unexpected elements, whether through format, setting, or approach, you jolt audiences out of their habitual thinking and command their attention. The brain, suddenly confronted with something novel, snaps to alertness and begins processing information more deeply. Pursuing unconventional strategies inevitably involves some uncertainty and the possibility of failure. But the alternative, clinging to familiar methods, practically guarantees your impact will be limited. Another advantage of risk-taking is the learning opportunities it provides. Setbacks, even painful ones, provide valuable intelligence about what works and what doesn't. If you can treat failures as data rather than a disaster, you create opportunities for growth that more conservative strategies can't touch. As IBM founder Thomas J. Watson observed, if you want to increase your success rate, double your failure rate. But building this experimental mindset may require a culture shift. Teams have to feel safe enough to test unconventional ideas. The goal isn't reckless abandon, but rather systematic exploration of new possibilities coupled with rapid iteration based on results. Some attempts will fall flat, but ultimately the insights you gain from these experiments will yield better results than endlessly recycling the same tired formats that everyone expects and ignores. Before pitching, qualify. A mid-sized marketing agency receives what seems like a huge opportunity, an invitation to pitch for a Fortune 500 company's major rebrand project. The potential contract value would transform its business overnight. However, upon further investigation, warning signs emerge. The company has worked with the same agency for a decade. The current agency CEO plays golf with the client's CMO, and the brief includes oddly specific requirements that perfectly match the incumbent's previous work. Gradually, it becomes clear. What seemed like a golden opportunity is something else. An administrative exercise designed to satisfy procurement rules. The real decision had already been made. This scenario illustrates an uncomfortable truth. Some pitch contests aren't contests at all. Companies sometimes use multiple bidders as stalking horses to drive down their preferred vendor's price, or simply to fulfill regulatory obligations while having no intention of switching providers. The eager agency that spends weeks crafting the ideal response is unknowingly playing into someone else's negotiation strategy. If you're smart, you'll recognize these indicators and opt not to participate. You can then conserve your resources for situations in which you actually have a realistic chance of success. This means that before you invest major effort in a customer, you qualify them. Ask yourself, who is this client? Was this request unexpected? Have you previously worked with the key executives involved? Will you be permitted to meet the people who actually control the budget? Can this organization realistically afford our services? Answering questions like these will help reveal whether you're entering a fair competition or serving as an unwitting pawn in someone else's game. Equally important is honest self-evaluation, or, as the author puts it, qualifying yourself. What unique advantages do you offer beyond competitive pricing? Do you have the track record and expertise to execute successfully? Will the timeline, budget, and scope allow for quality delivery? Are you philosophically aligned with this organization's mission and methods? Can you deliver real value to the client while making a profit? These internal assessments prevent the costly mistake of winning work that ultimately doesn't serve you. Sometimes the most powerful move available to you is simply declining to participate. This can change the balance of power and force clients to reveal their true intentions. Ultimately, your goal should be to seek out strategically promising projects, rather than every possibility that crosses your desk. Lead with feeling, follow with facts. Bob, a startup founder, clicks to slide 47 of his pitch deck. The investor's eyes glazed over somewhere around slide 23, but he keeps going. More market data, more competitive analysis, more financial projections. But what he doesn't realize is that the investors already have a favorite in this space, and every new chart he shows becomes ammunition against him. See? Their customer acquisition cost is 23% higher than the competitors, one mutters. And look at this churn rate. While a situation like this would be challenging for any presenter, Bob isn't doing himself any favors. What's the problem? Most entrepreneurs approach pitching backwards. They assume that rational people will reach rational conclusions when presented with compelling data. But decades of psychological research reveal a different truth. If you meet a skeptical audience with facts alone, they may just become more resistant. When people encounter information that threatens what they already believe, their brains don't evaluate it fairly. They become expert fault finders, cherry-picking weaknesses and dismissing strengths. This reveals something crucial about persuasion. You can't logic your way past emotional resistance. You have to start with emotions first, then bring in the facts as a backup. Here's how that looks in practice. Diane, the CEO of a healthcare startup, meets with investors. But at first, she doesn't even open her laptop. Instead, she tells a 90-second story about her daughter's asthma attack at 2 a.m. The panic of watching her child struggle to breathe, a useless monitoring device that gave her no warning, a terrifying drive to the ER and her feelings of helplessness. Something shifts in the room. The investors aren't analyzing anymore. They're connecting. Parents themselves, they remember their own late-night panics and the primal fear of being unable to protect someone vulnerable. Now, as Diane opens her laptop and shows her technical specs and market analysis, the investors aren't hunting for problems. They want this thing to work. They're looking for confirmation that it can. Bob tried in vain to convince people who were emotionally closed off. Diane opened their hearts first, then let loose with facts and logic. She worked with their psychology instead of against it, recognizing that even the most logical people experience with their gut first and their head later. The lesson here is not to ditch the facts, it's to get the sequence right. First, use emotion to set the stakes and dissolve resistance. Second, use logic to give your audience the permission to act on what they already feel. Peak performance on pitch day. Sarah stares at the conference room door, her palms sweating. In 3 minutes, she'll be presenting the biggest pitch of her career. Just 6 months ago, she would have been consumed by racing thoughts about everything that could go wrong. But today feels different. She straightens her shoulders, takes a deep breath, and smiles. So, you've done your homework, having qualified your customer and decided to pitch. You've crafted an innovative presentation that leads with emotion. In our final section, let's talk about how to dominate on the day itself. On pitch day, protect your energy by clearing your schedule of other commitments. Make time for adequate sleep, eat familiar foods, and plan your clothing and transportation well in advance. But beyond these basics, one step toward peak performance begins with reframing your relationship to nervousness. Pre-pitch anxiety affects everyone. From Ella Fitzgerald to Stephen Fry, even the most accomplished performers report feeling nerves before performing. The key is learning to harness rather than fight your nervous energy. The physiological arousal you experience, racing heart, quickened breathing, heightened awareness, is a source of vitality that can elevate your presentation beyond what rehearsal alone could. Olympic athletes consistently describe their pre-competition state as excitement rather than nervousness, recognizing that both emotions produce nearly identical physical responses. This reframe transforms anxiety from an obstacle into fuel. One crucial way to help manage your nervous system is through your breathing. Rapid, shallow breathing amplifies anxiety, while deliberate breathing techniques physiologically slow your heart rate and promote calm. Try box breathing, inhaling for 6 seconds, holding for 6, exhaling for 6, and holding again for 6. Practice this technique until it becomes automatic, allowing you to deploy it moments before your presentation. You can also prepare by working deliberately with your internal dialogue. Write down each negative thought that surfaces, then counter it with evidence-based responses rooted in your actual preparation. When your mind generates fears like, "I'm going to mess up" or "I'm not qualified," respond with concrete reminders of how much you rehearsed and your well-earned position on the team. This process can help you transform vague anxieties into manageable, rational assessments. Physical postures can also help. Some studies find that power poses, for example, standing with feet shoulder-width apart, hand on hips, chest out, can increase confidence and reduce the stress hormone cortisol. Combine these poses with visualizing a specific moment when you felt accomplished and successful. Allow those positive emotions to fully resurface and carry them into your presentation. Remember, you're not just asking for something, you're offering something valuable. Your nervousness is proof that this matters to you and that authenticity will resonate with your audience. Trust your preparation, embrace the moment, and let your passion for your work shine through. The main takeaway of this Blink to Pitch by Danny Fontaine is that effective pitching is about creating memorable experiences that connect emotionally with your audience. Instead of tedious and predictable PowerPoint slides filled with data, focus on making your audience feel the problem you're solving through immersive demonstrations or compelling stories. Take calculated risks with unconventional formats to break through the mental autopilot that causes people to tune out what's familiar. Remember to qualify both your opportunities and yourself before investing time in pitches that may not be winnable. And when you do present, lead with emotion first to open hearts and minds, then support your case with logic. On pitch day, reframe your nervousness as excitement and trust in your preparation. Remember, a great pitch can be anything, just so long as it creates a memorable moment for your audience and helps move them to action. Well, that's it for this Blink. We hope you enjoyed it. If you can, please take the time to leave us a rating, as we always appreciate your feedback. See you again in the next Blink.